Good Ki Fateh. Hope you can all hear me. My name is Narinder Pal Singh. I will be the moderator for today's session. We are delighted to have you with us. Let me share a bit about the Sikh Research Institute, or SikhRI. Over the last 7 years, SikhRI focused on community development through programs, leadership programs developing visionaries, trained 3,000 worldwide. Educational seminars stopping misinformation reached 300,000 globally. K-12 services teaching values and language skills served 41 schools, 500 teachers, and 1,700 students. Today's webinar is free of charge for all attendees, but not for SikhRI. If you get value out of today's session, I strongly urge you to consider donating through the website at www.sikhri.org. Let us begin our presentation session today. Your presenters today will be Harinder Singh and Surinder Pal Singh. Harinder Singh is the co-founder and the Chief Programming Officer of the Sikh Research Institute. He addresses Sikh, Punjab, and South Asian issues throughout the world through articles, workshops, and presentations. His activism spans the context of contemporary realities as expressed in art, linguistics, development, theology, and politics. His passion is to learn and share the Sikh culture. He also serves on the boards of Punjab Digital Library and United Communities of San Antonio. Surinder Pal Singh works as Research Associate with the Sikh Research Institute since April 2007. He holds a bachelor's degree in medical and a master's degree in English. He's the India coordinator for SikhRI programs and also a lead in Gurbani Linguistics book program. Currently, he also serves as the project coordinator of Punjab Digital Library in a volunteer capacity. Before we begin, I have two short announcements. The next live webinar is for children, and the topic is the Janeu story. The presenter is Inni Kaur. It is on July 23rd at the same time, 11 Central. Please go to the sikhri.org website to sign up. Each live webinar is made possible through generosity of attendees like you. I strongly urge you to extend your financial support to help SikhRI to continue to provide such programs. We strongly encourage you to help make today's session interactive. 20 minutes into the presentation, you will have the ability to start asking questions pertaining to slides covered. If you have general questions, we urge you to wait until the end of the presentation. In the side panel, please state your name, city, and question. If you would like to verbally ask your question, please confirm that you have a microphone. Please address all questions to myself, Narinder Pal Singh, so I can compile them for the presenters. Now, I would like to pass it over to Harinder Singh to begin today's presentation. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Are you guys able to hear me now? Okay. Sorry about the little bit of technical difficulty. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. On behalf of Surinder Pal Singh and myself, I welcome you all to the webinar today. We are going to facilitate this session, which loosely is titled Babar Bani, Confronting Religious and Political Corruption. And essentially, what we are looking into is what lesson can be drawn from the 4 Shabads, which are generally called Babar Bani, and we'll get into the context of that in terms of the kind of corruptions we notice at the time of Guru Nanak Sahib as well as today, and how we are able to sort of get into the practical lessons for today as well. Before I start, I wanted to start with this long quote, and it's on your screen. You can read it, but I would also like to read it and discuss some of the elements before we get into the presentation. I find this to be quite relevant and inspiring, and it also differentiates the purpose why gurus came into this world. So he says, the context of this is that he's describing here what the radical Bhagats, what is generally called the radical Bhagats, or contemporaries of Guru Nanak Sahib, like Bhagat Kabir, Baba Fari, Ravdas, and the so-called the Bhakti movement when Guru Nanak comes. So he's referring to them when he says, but these good and noble men, so these is referring to the Bhakti movement people, and he goes, but these good and noble men appear to have been so impressed with the nothingness of this life that they deemed the amelioration of man's social conditions to be unworthy of thought. So Professor Puran Singh essentially saying that there was a lot of focus on spiritual development. The social conditions, not too many people were still paying attention. Even the ones who were paying attention, they were ignoring the social conditions. They aimed chiefly at emancipation from priestcraft or from the grossness of idolatry and polytheism. So essentially, the religious elements or the spiritual elements. They formed pious associations of contended quietus, or they gave themselves up to the contemplation of the futurity in the hope of approaching bliss, rather than called upon their fellow creatures to throw aside every social as well as religious trammel and to arise a new people freed from the debasing corruption of ages. Since we are discussing corruption, I thought this is appropriate. That what Guru Sahib, and he's differentiating between the radical Bhakti movement and what the Sikh thesis is. He says, well, Sikh thesis is not just about contemplating and developing yourself and fighting the spiritual sort of a domination which exists in this world, but Guru Sahibs are actually more, are also about at the same time, the social trammel, not just the religious trammel, and freeing people from every corruption they are confronting. And he continues, he says, they perfected forms of dissent. They here refers to the radical Bhagats again. They perfected forms of dissent rather than planted the germ of nations, and their sects remain to this day as they left them. It was reserved for Nanak, Guru Nanak Sahib, it was reserved for Nanak to perceive the true principles of reform and to lay those broad foundations which enabled his successor Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj to fire the minds of his countrymen with a new nationality and to give practical effect to the doctrine that the lowest is equal with the highest in race as in creed, in political rights as in religious hopes. Now this is the departure from existing world traditions or beliefs or the ideologies of the time, that what Guru Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh, that the prophet ingenious, the gurus, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਪ੍ਰਤਿਭਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ, guru ingenious ਕੀ ਸੀਗੀ? What they did were that they infused this idea of developing, treating people equal, not just in religious sense, which I think some of the religious thoughts, even now, they accept that part, but also in political rights. And this is the sort of the larger thesis of SikhRI. So with that in mind, let's get into what we're going to do today. Well, our topic is corruption, and you can read the definition there. Since we are talking about corruption, well, it can be presented in several ways, and if you look in the worldwide phenomena, when the word corruption comes into our minds, we are talking about lack of integrity or honesty, especially susceptibility to bribery or use of a position of trust for dishonest gain. So whether it's your local gurdwara, local church, local politician, public official, even at our homes, in our homes I should say, we will see how corruption actually enters at various stages of life, and at some point it becomes habitual. So we'll get into the historical background of the Babar Bani. We'll get into what Guru's narrative is from the scriptural traditions available to us in Guru Granth Sahib. And then we'll talk about the larger themes which can be deduced to understand the fundamental questions which relate to suffering and corruption and how to respond to all this. We will try to bring in some a case study between how the missiles did it and how what we are facing today, as well as not just within the Sikh arena but the world arena, what's happening, and we'll try to finish it off with some action items as to what you and I can do. At this point, I'm going to ask Surinder Pal Singh to get into the background of the Bani.
All right. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I hope everyone can hear me. All right. So we'll get into why this Bani is called Babar Bani, though no such one Bani exists within Guru Granth Sahib. All the Shabads that constitute Babar Bani were traditionally named so appear separately within Guru Granth Sahib. So Babar Bani, title comes from a word that appears within one of the Shabads that appear in Babar Bani, and that line says, Saha Surt Gawaiya Rang Tamasa Chai Babar Bani Pher Gai Koi Na Roti Khai. So the idea behind this line is basically that everyone was busy in their comfort zones. They were complacent, having fun, enjoying everything. But the idea is Babar's sway. Bani basically means voice or sound or speech. So here the idea is that Babar's Bani or Babar's sway or command has spread. So there's a connotation of divine will, that Babar is being used as a tool of divine will. That divine or Vaheguru has made sure that these things change. People get out of their comfort zones. So that's the basic idea behind the title. So traditionally, scholars have taken this word from the text itself and named the 4 Shabads that appeared separately to name it as Babar Bani. Let's move on to the next slide, Virji. All right. So what constitutes Babar Bani? So there are basically 4 Shabads within this Bani that appear separately. First 3 Shabads appear in Rag Asa, but they too, within them, the first appears separately, and then two are continuous, and then third one is in the Lang Rag. That's, though the narrative is related to the attack of Babar on Hindustan, and specifically what Guru Nanak Sahib witnessed at Saidpur, which is currently the Ahmedabad of Pakistan. So the narrative, I believe, has been, the Bani has been revealed at the same time, but it has been separated because the structure of the Guru Granth Sahib is musical. So the first Bani, first Shabad, which is in Rag Asa on page 360, appears in Kar 6th, and the second two one appear in Kar Tija. That's why they've been, I believe, separated. But otherwise, they are part of the same single narrative. And the language appears to be old simple Punjabi, and the time is when Babar attacked in 1521. All right, Vijay, next slide. Okay. All right. So this is we're going to cover a brief history of the narrative so that we have a background. So there are 2 major players in it. One was the current ruler of the time of the Hindustan, Ibrahim Lodi, who was a Pathan, who basically ruled from 1517 through 1526, and that's the time when Babar attacked Hindustan and conquered the whole region. So basically, it's the time when Guru Nanak Sahib was on his Tiji Udasi, and he was coming back from Makkah Medina through Kabul to Saidpur, and that's the time when Guru Sahib witnessed all this, and he, puts everything in his words as he receives it from the divine. There's also another line that appears in Guru Granth Sahib at some other place that refers to, and it's a passing reference to what happened in Lahore as well. So some scholars say that it is a reference to that Guru Nanak Sahib was also at Lahore when Babar came again to attack it. So we'll go into, and we'll have 2 maps to assist us and see how Babar came in and attacked Hindustan. So basically here you see on the right hand side map there's on top there is Fargana. That's his ancestral principality where he was born in the Central Asia. So it's said that he was thrown out of that area and he couldn't keep his dominion in this area. So he moved southeast basically. So first he attacked Kabul at around 1504 and the upper one. Okay. Yeah, here in 1504 and occupied it, and then he stayed there. He stayed put for a while there, and then he attacked Peshawar in 1519. That's about the same route that Guru Nanak Sahib took when he was coming from, Middle East, Kabul, Peshawar. He took the same route as well. So after that, within a year in 1521, he attacked Hindustan through Indus Valley, and he took the route of Sialkot through Saidpur. You see Lahore, right, above that, northwest, you see a black dot. That's Saidpur. That's the exact place where the incidents happened, and that's where Guru Nanak Sahib witnessed all this. From here, he moved on and attacked Lahore after 3 years. The next spot you see, and that's where we believe that the one-line Shabad that appears, one-line slok actually that appears, where Guru Nanak Sahib alludes to what he witnessed happened in Lahore. And then he attacked Delhi in 1925, and we have all heard of the historical battle of Panipat, the fiercest one of the fiercest ones. That's where he actually defeated Ibrahim Lodi and ultimately established his dominion over the whole of northern region of what we today know as Hindustan. All right, let's move on. So that's the brief historical background of all this. Now let's move on to the actual text, the Shabad, or the Guru's narrative, and how he describes what actually happened at that place. So this is the first Shabad that was in Rag Asa and Karchema. So Guru Sahib basically says, I'll first excuse me, read the text, and so that you can follow. There are two different schools of thought over how to pronounce Gurbani, and one of the traditional ones is that you need to pronounce Gurbani as it is written, where you pronounce every onkar, every vowel sound present, since Gurmukhi is a phonetic script. So I'll try to pronounce it so that you can figure out how it goes, and then I'll try to make sense of what Guru Sahib is trying to say here. Khurasan khasamana kiya, Hindustan udaraya, ape do suna dei karta, jamukari mugalu chadaya. Eti mar pai karlane taya ki dard na aya, karta tu sapna ka soi, je sakta sakte ko umare, tamani rosu na hoi. Sakta si mare pੈ ਵਗੈ ਖਸਮੈ ਸਾਪੁਰ ਸਾਈ ਰਤਨ ਵਿਗਾੜੀ ਵਿਗੋਏ ਕੁੱਤੀ ਮੂਇਆ ਸਾਰ ਨਾ ਕਾਈ ਆਪੇ ਜੋੜੀ ਵਿਛੋੜੇ ਆਪੇ ਵੇਖ ਤੇਰੀ ਵਡਿਆਈ ਜੇ ਕੋ ਨਾ ਉਤਰ ਆਏ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਾਧ ਕਰੇ ਮਨਿ ਭਾਣੇ ਖਸਮੈ ਨਦਰੀ ਕੀੜਾ ਆਵੈ ਜੇਤੇ ਚੁਗੈ ਦਾਣੇ ਮਾਰੀ ਮਾਰੀ ਜੀਵੈ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਛੁਪਾਏ ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਵਖਾਣੇ. So that's the original text. So basic idea in this whole Shabad is that that this whole word is a stage where Vaheguru is unfolding its play. So everything is within divine will. Khurasan khasamana kiya, Hindustan raya. If you notice, there's a pattern that it's being presented as that the Babar is actually a tool in the hand of Vaheguru, and Vaheguru is using Babar to actually implement its will. Khurasan khasamana kiya, Hindustan raya. Now there are two different thoughts again on this, that some say that Khurasan he actually occupied Khurasan and then came down on Hindustan. Others say that it means that he was never able to conquer Khurasan. And I believe the second one is more probable. Ape dos na dei karta, jamu kare Mughal chadaya. Basically the Vaheguru or the creator didn't take the blame and actually sent Babar as his messenger of death. So the idea is Babar is actually a tool of divine will. Eti mar pai karlane taki dard na aaya. But there are two different things going on. At one point Guru Sahib is saying that, later on in other Shabats, that it's the divine or Vaheguru who is asking me to say all this. So I'm not, these words aren't mine. So everything I'm saying actually is coming from Vaheguru. And at the same time, he's also, questioning Vaheguru. He's basically identifying with the pain of the commoners there. He says, "Eti maar pai kar lane, taki dardan aaya." Didn't you feel the pain of the people? They were screaming, they were, shouting, they were being butchered. Karta tu sabna ka soi. That's the rahautuk. That, the central theme of the Shabad. Karta tu sabna ka soi, je sakta sakte ko mare, taman rosna hoi. You are the creator of everything. So you are basically the master who is in control. And if a powerful person, beats or kills or fights a powerful, equally powerful person, then I don't mind. You don't feel the pain. But then sakta si mare pe vagga khasma sapursai. If a sakta here means powerful, si is lion and vagga is a herd of cows. So if a powerful lion attacks a herd of cows, then khasma sapursai. One needs to ask the master what's going on. Ratan vigad vigoye kutti muya sar na jai. The rest of the lines are basically describing the plight of the people, what actually happened. So he's saying that those people who were so, used to the comforts of luxurious life, were basically being, now they were lying in dust basically. And then he continues the idea that you are actually doing everything. This is your greatness, that ultimately you are the one who is doing everything. If somebody feels in his I-ness or ego that he himself or she herself is doing this, then she is mistaken. Khasma nadri kida ave, jete chuge jane, dane. So jete chuga dane. As many, grains you pick. Basically the idea that as much as you consume, so much guilty you are basically. The idea of indulgence here. Mar mar jiva tak chupaye, Nanak naam ukhane. Ultimately Guru Sahib, gives his judgment, that if you actually only you can find a way only if you stay humble. That's the idea. Okay, next Shabad. Jinsir sohani patiya mangi pai sandur, se sirkati munniyan gal vich avatur. Basically he continues the same way of describing things. What was the state before Babar attacked and what happened after that. Within few days or weeks, everything changed. That's the idea. And he's, describing things at personal level, picking on particular people, group of people, how they were actually before the attack and what happened to them after the attack. Jin sir sohan patiya mangi. He is basically referring to the women in the palaces. Jana de mathe, patiya is basically, in Hindu tradition they have this, they separate the hair of the scalp, and you have a line, you can see the scalp, and there they put this red vermilion in it, which basically means that the woman is married. So he's basically saying that, us vele sariyan de sir vich mathiyan vich sandoor paye si, and they looked so beautiful. But now what's happening? Se sir kati, those heads, kati is scissors, and munyan comes from munana, which basically means to cut hair. All those heads have been shaven now, and they now lay in dust basically. Mehla andar hondiyan hun behanna milan hadur. The same idea continues, that they were living all luxuries and pleasures you could think of, and now they're all basically, nobody's there to take care of them or answer their call. So the same idea continues, jado siyan vihaiyan lade sohan paas, when they were married, they were, they look beautiful, and they were greeted, and they sat besides the bridegrooms. Hindoli chad aiyan. Hindoli comes from doli. पिछले टाइम विच बीबियां बह के आंदियां होंदियां सी विआह तो बाद. So chad aiyan dand khand kite ras. They wore all kinds of jewelry. Dand khand here means, jewelry made up of ivory. So the basic idea here is Ades is Baba Ades Adpurk Thera Antana Paya Kar Kar Vekeres. The same idea is continuing. You are eternal, your will or your extent cannot be found. You are basically running the show. Look at their plight. At one time they were so happy and so comfortable, and within few days or weeks now they are on the floors. Upro pani variye challe chamkani pass. The same idea that when they were married and when they came to their in-laws' homes, how they were pampered or suspected or taken care of, but now everything is gone. Ik lakh lehan behtiyan, the idea of in Punjab we give sagans when there's gifts when somebody gets married. The same idea that they got so many gifts used to get. Gari chware khandiyan, they used to consume good food, all sorts of foods. Tingal silka paiya, tutan mot sariyan. All their signs of luxury have gone, and now the noose is around their neck. That's the basic idea. Sabad continues, Tan jovan doi vary hoye. Okay, the same things they enjoyed, the pleasures, the luxuries, now they have become their enemy. Dutanu farmaya la challe pati gawai. Duta here is refers to Babar's army, that they actually destroyed everything and killed everyone with dishonor and took everything along. Je tas pave devadiyai, je pave de sajai. He continues, Guru Sahib continues saying, reiterating the same idea that it's in your hands. You are basically doing everything. Je tas pave. If it pleases him, people get honor or they get punished. Agon de je chetiye ta kayat mila sajai. If you had thought about the consequences, if they had thought about the consequences, all this wouldn't have happened. The idea is to always keep the end in mind. Always be mindful of your actions, what you do. They didn't think of it. That's why they are now being, attacked. Saha surt gavaiya rangat masai chai. The princes lost their senses in indulgence and all sorts of pleasures. Babar Bani, okay, this was the line that was quoted from. So the title of the Bani comes from this book. Babar Bani phir gai, koi na roti khai. Now the divine command or will has manifested through Babar's power. That's the basic idea. And now, even the choirs, now here choirs, here the princes refer to the princes from the Lodi side, the Pathans. Ikna waqt khoayan, ikna puja jai. Now this is very interesting. Usually word ik refers to, in Punjabi, one. But you would notice that word ikna almost all of the time usually refers to more than one people. Either it connotes some or a few or things like that in Gurbani. So here ikna means a some or few people. So the idea is ikna waqt khwaiya, ikna puja jai. The idea of waqt comes from, when we say Musliman panj nawaz kar dene ya panj nawazan de waqt hai ne. So sometimes you will see in Gurbani that things are not directly referred to, and you need to guess things through the context. So how do you find what Guru Sahib is telling us here? You see in the second phrase, Guru Sahib tells us ikna puja jai, that others go without their pujas. So the idea is that the attack was indiscriminate. Nobody was being spared. People who missed their namaz time, and the Hindus missed their puja time. Chonke vin hindwaniya kyon tikke katta hai nai. The idea of purity, which the Brahmin so dearly holds near to his heart, is being referred to here. This thing also appears in Asaki War. We hear every day, chonke upar kise na jana, dekha chonka kaddi kar. The idea of purity, that Brahmin creates around itself. So the same idea is continuing, that idea of purity, they couldn't, protect their territories. Ram na kabhun chetiyo, hun kehan na mila khudai. When there was time, they didn't even, remember Ram, and now they do not even have the option to say Allah just to please the attackers, the Muslims. Ek ghar aave hai apna, ek mil puchhe hai sukh. After the attack was over, everything was destroyed, people start coming back. And Guru Sahib is basically describing that they are trying to make sense of things, but they cannot. Ikna eho likhya beh beh veh dukh. Now the consequences parts have started. That whatever you did or whatever you did in the past is now reflecting in your present. So you're crying basically of whatever you did in your past. Jo tas bhava so thiye nanak kya manuk. Same idea. Guru Sahib finishes the Sabad with the same idea that whatever you, Vaheguru, oh Vaheguru, whatever you will or desire, that happens. What can a human do? All right, Vijay, next slide. So the basic theme in all the Shabads that's going on is the strength and pervasiveness of the divine will, and that divine will changes fates within moments, and then the idea that luxury or forgetfulness or indulgence actually brings ultimately stagnation and then ruin. Okay, next Shabad. कहा सु खेल तबेला कोड़े कहाँ पेरी सहनाई कहा सु तेग बंद गाड़ेरड़ कहा सु लाल कवाई कहा सु आरसिया मुह बंके ऐथै दे सहनाही इह जग तेरा तू गोसाई एक घड़ी में थापि उथापे जर वंड देवै पाई राहु कहाँ सु घर दर मंडप महला कहा सु बंक सराई कहाँ सु सेज सुखाली कामण जिस वेख नींद न आई कहाँ सु पान तंबोली हरमा होइया छाई मई इस जर कारण घड़ी विगूती इन जर घड़ी खुआई पापा बाज होवे नाही मोया साथ न जाई जिसनो आप खुआए करता खुश लय चंगियाई. We'll just skim through this. The same idea that kahasu, where are those pleasures? Where are those palaces? Where are those horses, chariots, all those high buildings, all pleasures you enjoyed? They're all gone within moments. The central theme of the Shabad is "Eh jag tera tum gosai." You are the master. Ek khadi mein thap uthape. What I just mentioned. Divine will changes fates within moments. Ek khadi mein, within a moment. Thap uthape, you establish and then you destroy. Jarvand deva pai, and you use the wealth or the maya to actually divide brothers. They fight and kill each other. So these are all your tools to make people get out of their comfort zones or whatever they are in, those complacent states. Okay. Kahasu kardar mandap madi, the same idea that where are those pleasures, those high buildings, palaces. Kahasu sage sukhali. Sage comes from the word bad. Sukhali is something that's pleasing or comforting. Kaman just dvek indna, those brides seeing whom whose sight made one sleepless completely. Kahasu pan tamboli harma, all the pleasures, chewing leaves, the betel leaves, traditionally from Indian tradition or in South Asia, you have those betel leaves that you eat. So, pan kenne. So, same idea is continuing here of pleasures. Isjar karan kari viguti, isjar kari khuai. This wealth has disgraced many and has brought corruption to many. One of the very powerful ideas is Papa baj hove nahi, moya saath na jai. That the wealth brings corruption with it, and that whenever the Vaheguru wants to ruin somebody or destruct somebody, it just takes away the virtues of that person or that group or society. Whoever the Creator confounds first has its virtues stripped. Just know, aap khwaye karta, khus lai change. Okay. Koti hu peer varj rahaye, ja mir sunya taya, than maqam jale birj mandar, much koir rwaya. Koi mughal na hua anta, kise na parcha paya. Hello, Viji. I believe you would like to add something to it. I know you really like this line. Koti, third Shabad, Koti hu peer varj rahaye.
Yeah, I was just unmuting myself. Thank you. Yeah, I basically utilize this line to explain that, generally in SikhRI we believe that Miri Piri is an institution of Guru Har Gobind Sahib. That's partially true, but what is really true is that every idea or principle we have in SikhRI started by Guru Nanak Sahib himself. And this is his reference. He is using the word Mir and Pir for the first time. And essentially what this is saying is, where are those thousands of many Pirs? Where are those spiritualists when they heard that the prince is attacking India? So his point is, the spiritual personalities, so-called, they gather around whenever there is confusion, whenever there is something to be done. These spiritual personalities are not around. And why are they not showing their magic that day? Koi Mughal na hua anda, kine na parcha laya. Nobody is testing the Mughal invasion. Nobody is showing their magic that day. So the point here is, generally speaking, what we consider to be spiritual personalities, we get fascinated by them because they do some extraordinary stuff, but they don't do that extraordinary stuff when people are being killed. Okay.
Thank you, Virji. The idea of, doing things when they're most needed. Mughal Pathana Pai Ladai, then Guru Sahib basically describes what happens in the battlefield. Ladai ran mein hai teg vagai. Teg is Kirpan. Basically, both sides wielded their swords. Uni tupuk taan chalai, uni hast chadai. One side came up with these battle guns, and then other sides came up with, elephants. So, Jinki Chiri Dargah Party, the idea is Tina Marna Pai, whose writ is torn in the court must perish. Those who didn't care about their action of their consequences earlier are meant to die or perish. That's the basic idea. Ek Hindwani, Avar Turkani, Patiani, Thakurani. Basically, Guru Sahib is putting all the people who are suffering together. He is identifying with the pain of everyone. Turkani and the Turks and the Hindus, the upper castes, the lower castes. He is identifying with the pain of everyone because the destruction is indiscriminate. Ikna parents, Silkor Pate, Ikna Vas Samani. Some are dying, in the dust. They are being, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਧੂੜ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੋਲੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਰਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ. That is the idea. ਆਪੇ ਕਰੇ ਕਰਾਏ ਕਰਤਾ, ਕਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਖ ਸੁਣਾਈਏ, ਦੁੱਖ ਸੁੱਖ ਤੇਰਾ ਭਾਣਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕਿਸ ਥਾਂ ਜਾਏ ਰੁਲਾਈਏ. Everything is under your will, and it's only our actions that identify the consequences, the natural law that you have established. Okay. The fourth line, the fourth Shabad, comes from Rag Tilang, and it seems to have been addressed to Pai Lalo, as we see that it's in a vocative form, and Guru Sahib keeps referring to or addressing Pai Lalo. Jasi mein aave khasam ki bani, taisada kari gyan ve lalo. Now this is very interesting. Guru Sahib is basically saying that I'm not saying anything from my own self. The whole message or the whole idea is actually coming from the divine. So basically, whatever is being described so far, it's the divine idea that everything depends on your actions. You reap what you sow. Paap ki janjala kabul hota aya, jori manga daan mein lalo. Now he is describing that Babar has come down and he's asking for gifts, basically looting everything with force. Saram taram doye chhap khuloe, kood phira pradhan mein lalo. Now shame and righteousness have gone into hiding, and the lies have become the norm now. Musulmaniya, then he goes on, Musulmaniya padhe kateba, kasht mein kare khudaye ve lalo, jaat sanati hor hindwaniya, AP lekhe laye ve lalo. Everyone, because the destruction is indiscriminate, everyone is remembering their God or Allah or Vaheguru. So, but it's not working anymore. Khoon ke sohile gavi hai Nanak, rat ka kangu paye ve lalo. Everything has been replaced by blood, basically. Next slide, Virji. Okay, here ends the last Shabad. Sahib ke gun Nanak gaave, maas puri vich aakh masola. Nanak is singing the praise of the masters. of the master, and he's saying basically in the city of corpses, where there are dead bodies all around. Jin upai rang ravai betha vekha vakh ikela. The one who has created the world and has made it indulge is overseeing its, sitting alone and detached. Sacha so Sahib, such the powers. But at the same time, in the very next line, Guru Sahib is saying, despite of the fact that the Vaheguru has created everything, its justice or verdict is unbiased. Its justice is principle based. So, kapad kaya kapad tuk tuk hosi Hindustan samal si bola. Now, whatever I'm witnessing, Hindustan will remember what happened. Avan 78 jans. This has a historical reference. It is basically saying, when Babar came in 78, this is Vikrami Samvat, and you just subtract 57 years from it, and then you have the original CE numbers. So Avan 78 jans tar mein, his dynasty ended in, his son left in 1597 Vikrami. That's the idea. War would seem chala, these trends continue. Whenever there's corruption, more people will rise who will take up the, who will manifest divine will through their own might. Sach ki bani Nanak aakha, sach sunai si, sach ki ila. That's the most powerful line. Nanak speaks the truth when it's time to say the truth. Sahib ke, I think, okay. Sahib ke gun Nanak gaave, we have covered this. Okay. So basic idea is that that the killing, when there's societal corruption all around, when there's societal corruption, the destruction is indiscriminate as well. Nobody is spared, and it's the duty of so Guru Sahib is basically taking it upon it himself to identify with the pain of the commoners. So that's the basic idea in the text.
Thanks, SP. I'll move on to, so what we got in this text, the hard part is done. This is hard to figure out what Guru Bani is saying. And now we need to interpret this for relevance, what kind of fundamental questions are coming out of these. So if I may indulge in a couple of things, a couple of other things we learned is that actually look at the sensitivity level of Guru Nanak Sahib. That when he is describing the pain of a commoner, pain of people who are being persecuted by what I'm calling, because of the conspiracy of, as he presents, the spiritualists and the political heads, he says the ones who are getting affected now, no other prophet in the history of the world has shown this level of sensitivity, that when he describes, if you look at the previous lines, that not only do I hear the pain of the Hindu women, I also am listening to the pain of the Muslim women. This is very interesting, and he says these wedding songs are of blood. Sohila is a wedding song. Khoon ke sohile gaviye Nanak. Rat ka kungu paaye ve lalo. The things have just gone crazy here. And he says, so while the Shabads are describing that everything is happening in the divine will, what Guru Nanak Sahib to me is speaking two things. One, he says, is the dialogue you must have with the divinity. Vaheguru de naal lagatar dialogue karna. Jede questions nahi samajh aa rahe, the things we are not able to figure out why some things are happening, we need to reflect on and have a relationship with the divine to understand that. And the other side of the coin, as Bhai Gurdas called SikhRI to be, is that Guru Nanak Sahib shows us that other side. What is that other side? He responds to all this. He says, I'm confronting what is happening. I might not understand why it is happening, but I'm confronting what's happening. And we know historically and from these Shabads that he confronts Babar and he's jailed for it, and he organizes people in jail to counter the mass incarcerations, to develop prisoners' rights and things of that level. So moving on, I'm going to group the issues which you and I might have, or the world today has. So what is the Sikh stand on suffering? Why is this suffering happening if everything is under divine will? And secondly, why should we confront injustice? If everything is under divine will, shouldn't we just let it go? And then third is, if we figure out so far what we have covered is the when and the wheres of this Babar Bani, we are now getting into the what, why, and how. So what is the Sikh doctrine on suffering? Why should we confront justice? And what is available to us to fight corruption and domination in this world? So let's explore these questions. Basically, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over a lot of the stuff. But one of the biggest things which comes out regarding suffering is that this happens due to perversion of mind. Human suffering for us, because there is no presence of devil or Satan as an independent figure or a human or extra-human figure, just like Vaheguru is not a human or extra-human figure. It's virtues which operate in us to bring Star Wars into it. This is a force which operates, which you and I can also utilize this force to become very devilish or very saintly. So suffering for us is perversion of mind. This perversion enters us, this corruption enters us when we live in forgetfulness. What is forgetfulness? When we are not connected to others, or what the European philosophers used to call the other condition. As soon as you see something as the other, we get corrupted. Whether it is between the brothers, between the races, between the genders, between the haves and have-nots, whatever this otherness enters us. We know ideologically and doctrinally that all beings are created equal, but even then we are not able to do it because we forget that Vaheguru or the divinity or the force is operating in all of us. And when we enter this forgetfulness in this love of duality, we do things whose consequences are what we see around today. Genocides were happening then, genocides are happening now. Bad taxation occurred then, unbalanced taxation occurs now. Right-wing fundamentalists make a lot of noise then, right-wing fundamentalists are making a lot of noise now. More guess because of this forgetfulness. I'll move on to the second thing. What is the root of this corruption then? What is the root of this forgetfulness? Why is it that injustices are occurring? Well, again, in the Shabads you covered earlier, we cannot just blame the leadership for it. If you look at the Shabads, Guru Nanak Sahib is talking about what is happening all around. People are happy, status quo. It's like in today's world we have corporate slavery. We are happy with our promotions, my car and my house, and I don't give a damn about the civil liberties of people around me. Same things are happening then. People are happy chewing their pan, and today that might be particular gum or particular drugs you might take for your enjoyment. Well, his thesis essentially comes out, the root of corruption is there is ignorance all around. When it's not just the leaders which are false, so is the constituency. Kud Raja, Kud Parja. He says, Andhi Rayat Gyan Vihoni, the constituency is blind. And if constituency is blind, whoever is representing you in that constituency, whether it is your parish or Gurdwara, or whether it is your member of Congress or member of Parliament, they will be equally corrupt because they know you and I don't give a damn, so they're going to take us to task. The root of corruption is ignorance. Root of corruption is indifference. Root of corruption is making everything a spectator sport and not giving a damn about it. And that, again, the relationship between the state and the masses gets described. And within this, essentially what is being said is that every agency available to any power is going to get used to inflict wounds on the commoner. So basically, just like Guru Nanak Sahib said, that the spiritualists actually worked in conspiracy with the head of the state, in that case Babar, so there is no magic that day. And I've used this to describe 1984 as well. These days, Sikhs have so many Babas. Where were all these Babas in 1984 or between 87 and 93 especially? Well, as Bhai Gurdas says, they're like Savan Deepa Bhiriyan. They're seasonal. They're a fad. So today we have a lot of fad. If there is more confusion, because we have more spiritualists taking us to task, they work with our political heads, whether they are the Jathedars or whether they are the Akali parties or whether they are representatives of Sikhs self-appointed in America or other places. They work hand in hand to control you and me. Every agency of the state, which in this case you can say every agency of power, is used to inflict wounds on you and me, which means to create regressive policies so they can maintain their control, because we are way too busy in our entertainment looking at what MTV is doing or what Bollywood or Hollywood is producing, and we are just engrossed in that. So what is happening here? Well, if you look at it, they're basically power centers are either through states or non-states. If state has power, then they will play a role in geopolitics. They will control the economies of the world, the resources. There will be strategic planning on exactly who should have what right. There are going to be certain domination theories and expansionism. And we can see this in old European systems. We can see this in old Indian systems, in feudal systems. We see it what Noam Chomsky now calls in the American imperialism as well. So if there is a country involved, if a state is involved, all these things are visible to us even today. And if they are non-states, what we might call people who don't have a country of their own, or those who are operating in a country maybe with a dissent or maybe with countries, they work through ethnocide, gendercide, religious, social, and cultural genocides are taking place every day. What are these? But these are that you get rid of somebody's language, you get rid of somebody's culture, you essentially create assimilation towards whatever the powers are wanting to be. Religious leaders do this very well. I mean, we talk about RSS, that how they're doing it to the Sikhs, but look at what certain Sikh denominations are doing to SikhRI as well. So this is happening at all levels. The way to reduce history to mythology is to destroy their cultural elements, to destroy their historical evidence as to how they existed. So basically this is how it is done today. We might not have monarchical systems, but we have other systems available in contemporary world to continue the similar things. I'm going to continue, and if you guys want to send questions to Narinder Pal now, this will be a time. But basically, SP, if you would like to explain this slide, that will be great.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Vijay. So if you notice in every culture, every society, every nation, every community, there's a pattern. This is a universal pattern, and this is a natural law. Whenever you are you're comfortable, you are prosperous, you indulge, you start indulging, and what happens then? When you indulge, you dull your senses, your consciousness. You become less sensitive towards your environment, to the pains of other people, your own people or the people around you. So as a result of that, there is a degradation. There is a fall. This fall is collective. Look around you. It's all societal. It never happens individually. It's like if you look at corporate culture, the culture of consumption, it's all in a group. It never happens individually or in isolation. So whenever we are prosperous, we indulge, we fall, and ultimately we fall to slavery, or we are oppressed, or we are being killed. And then these are all natural laws. These happen. So whenever we are in slavery, we think about it. We struggle to get out of it. We look for answers. We look around and we think about it, and then there's a revival. We start introspecting, reflecting, and then there's an idea of ideological thinking. You start looking for your roots. What are the basic causes of pains? Why what is the cause of the present predicament we are in? We think about it, then we again rise. We again become principle centered. We again become community oriented or sangat oriented, and come out of our individualities. That's when we identify our collective power, our entity, our roots, and then when we again go back and become prosperous. And this is a cycle which continues again and again. Okay, so let's would you like to attempt this, Virji? We have a case study here, and see, back in Misl period, we were in more or less the same kind of a situation, maybe even worse. If you look at but almost the same kind of environment, but the response was very different. Let's go into that. Vijay, would you like to try this?
No, continue.
Okay, okay. So back then we were being hunted. The same thing is going on right now, as this Virji mentioned a few slides back. There is genocide still, but it's more systematic, which cannot be seen. But what was the difference? The difference was in our response. Earlier we weren't that forgetful. Now we are. We do not identify with the Guru's message. We don't identify with all sorts of castes tendencies we have. We indulge into too much of pleasure. If you go back and look at the lifestyle of the people of the Muslim period, it was completely different. They were minimalists, not in the literal sense, but they knew their boundaries. They chose their options very carefully. And as a result of that, or maybe it was because they were very principle or guru centered. They had high character and value, and they were all community centered, or idea centered or institution centered. They weren't individualists. They weren't self centered, and as a result they stood strong, and they faced all the difficulties, and came out with flying colors. And look at our predicament now. We can say the same about the situation we are in right now. So it's in the response basically. Let's talk about what our response should be, or should be, or what are those things that we can do actually to on a more basic level to improve our plight.
So the systematic genocide, when we are saying it's happening today, maybe there are other ways to look at it. A lot of the time we think 1984 was a genocide, but there are other things going on. The ethnocide word, when it gets used, how you get your information, who's controlling your religious center, who's controlling your institutions. So genocide is not just a physical killing. Obviously that's the one we focus on quite a bit, but it's also on what makes you, your heritage, your background, who decides who are Sikhs. These are all attempts as towards Sardar Patwan Singh used to call that Sikhs are under siege. So when you're under siege, physical killing is one of them. There are other levels of killings which are taking place, including killing of your language. So what are the basic things coming out here? Well, I want to just stop 3 things I want to focus on. One is that based on Gurbani, essential element is that all the corruption comes in because we live in forgetfulness. What in general Sikhi terminology we call asi Rabb nu ya Guru nu hazar nazar nahi jande. We don't feel the divine presence. When we don't feel the divine presence, guess what? We cheat. And that's what corruption is. As they say, what is integrity? Well, integrity is doing the right thing when nobody's looking. We all do the right thing when somebody's looking. So the action from that will be, at least let's bring more awareness and make life purposeful. What is life's purpose? Why do I exist? This is the idea level. This is the individual level. I need to answer this question, the level of my integrity and what level of awareness I'm living in. Akkha jiva visray mar jao. Guru Nanak Sahib says, I'm already dead if I don't live in awareness. So am I dead and walking around like zombies? Am I going to be alive with a purpose in my life? Second thing which comes out very clearly is that those who identify with Vaheguru, those who believe that divinity is within them, those who are able to recognize that divine is within me, they always identify with the pain, and not just the pain of their people, but pain of everyone. So what that means today is, do we really identify with the pain in the world? I mean, you want to fight corruption, you cannot, unless you identify with it. There's something seriously wrong with what is. Yesterday was Independence Day for South Sudan, Republic of South Sudan. How many of us know, well, maybe we know more about Darfur and Sudan, but how much of really know what kind of pain those people were facing? And we celebrate, the world celebrate, the people of Africa and Sudanese and the world assured that this kind of atrocity needs to stop, and the only way it can happen is when we make people free. And it just happened. You heard about Darfur in what, last 5 years maybe? All this been going on for several years, and yesterday was the Independence Day of South Sudan. People are answering the call. Am I answering any call? We want to win a war? Well, let's pick our battle. The only way to win a war is if we all fight our battles. And third is, Guru Nanak Sahib very clearly says, speak the truth when it's needed. Sach sunai si sach ki bela. Timeliness. They say timing is everything. Well, if timing is everything, are we doing the right things at the right time? Or are we waiting on Mr. and Mrs. Pant to tell us what to do? Are we waiting on our Babaji or Gyaniji or whichever other person you ask or the organization you ask? When are we going to stop asking, and when am I going to start walking the path? Basically not reducing Sikhi to the spectator sport and actually playing the game to confront these things. So there are 3 levels going on here. One is mental. What level of awareness am I living at? Second is, if you say you are developing yourself, are you answering any call? And if you are ready to answer the call, you will know what to do. You will pick a battle and fight it. And I just give an example of how it was done in South Sudan yesterday. If you don't do anything, then everyone pays, including you and me. Moving on with that, Let's extrapolate this within a Sikh world and a non-Sikh world. You know what your local Gurdwara is up to. You know what SGPC is up to. You know what Akal Takht and its officers are up to. At minimum, there is misappropriation of money, and at worst, there is embezzlement. Either way, they're equally bad. If you're not spending the money where it's supposed to be, and if you're using it for personal purposes, it's equally bad. And we know almost every single, there might be exceptions there, they're all doing this. And how are our political representatives representing us? I think there's ill representation or no representation of Sikh principles. Even the best Akali parties available to us, founded at Akal Takht in 1921, have given up their manifesto to say they don't represent the Sikh politics anymore, they represent Punjabi politics. We cannot have corruption-free world if the institutions, if your time and money goes to support institutions which are misappropriating money, embezzling money, and do not represent the Sikh rights. Let's bring it down. We live in a culture of impunity. We live in a culture of corruption. If you look at religious organizations throughout the world, look at their budgets, SGPC's budget, Vatican's budget, look at the mega churches in America, in the Western world, look at the scandals they go through, driving in a corporate jet and acting like they're making you believe in Jesus. It's same as when our Baba gets in a helicopter and says, I'm trying to do most amounts of Amrit. We are, I guess, trying to prove Karl Marx right, that this is the opium for the masses. This is where Richard Dawkins is absolutely right when he says these people are taking you to task, and this is exactly what Guru Nanak Sahib is saying. These spiritualists and political heads are taking you to task because you are allowing it to be. And Transparency International, that's the map on this slide. 2010 data says, and I picked the countries where you have most amounts of Sikhs. We live in this culture. Because Gurbani is not entering us, this culture around us is entering us. 178 countries are listed in terms of their corruption. The best country in the world is New Zealand or Singapore, least amount of corruption. Most is Somalia. Look at India is 87. That's where most of the Sikhs live. Look at other countries. You know, I picked the diaspora countries. Canada, Australia, UK, US, Malaysia, Thailand, Pakistan, Kenya. That's where our populations are, surrounded by culture of corruption. You know what has happened within American corporate culture, although it's ranked 22nd, but you know what Bank of America and Chase and Citibank here does. You know how your representatives are more elected by PAC money rather than some foundational principles of treating everyone with dignity. We are surrounded by culture whose ideas enter our mind and our organizations instead of Gurbani, Sikh history, and our own lifestyle entering our decision making. I'm almost done and we are ready to take question and answers. This is where I bring Puran Singh again. Let's read this, because then he speaks to this cultural sort of a genocide in a sense. He says, what use will be for the slaves to be made free if they know not the rapture of their inner freedom? So पहली गल तो ये है, जे बंदा अंदरों ही आजाद नहीं है, ते जो कल्ला सिर्फ बाहरों आजाद हो, if he is physically free and not mentally and spiritually free or economically free, what will really they do? What is that academic, politically voting democracy that has no personality of man in it? This is written in the 1920s, so wherever you say man, just apply human there. So he's basically saying, okay, you have developed some intellectual rigor, you are developing some Westminster democracies, but you are not really concerned about the personality of man. Here means the human feelings, the human agency. Mere institutions and organizations, all so impersonal, are dead machines. They have no personal sweet sympathy of man. And how can such personal democracy of the Guru be established unless the individual has in his soul consciousness the spontaneous overflow of the soul, where the true man of the Guru actually grows to be multitudes? He's basically saying, we have not even understood, if I may borrow the Sikh parlance, what really is Gurmukh. And we have not even allowed the archetype of Khalsa to even become our ideal lifestyle. That's become only the slogans. So the Khalsa lifestyle is not visible among the Sikhs because this is not appealing to the soul consciousness of us. How will we bring the representative democracy of the Guru in action? What will it avail him to be introduced to a thing of beauty if man is not yet cultivated enough for its pure joy? The fate of republics and Soviets is of the old governments. He's basically saying nothing is really much changing. Still full of corruption. With altering the laws, men have not outgrown their natures. He brings it down to what Guru Gobind Singh Sahib brings it down to, characteristics and behavior. Unless the Khalsa characteristic behavior comes back, just by creating certain slogans, certain laws, certain policies even, nothing will happen because our habits are not changing. The habitualness, the corruption which has entered our mind at the minutest levels, whether we are trying to bribe God or Vaheguru or Guru, or bribing an official, bribing a child, manipulating and dominating wives or husbands to subjects in the representative democracies, it's all same. They're all coming in because we do not value what we keep saying, this part, because enlightenment is not here. And according to Gurbani, enlightened individual is the one who does not fear anything and nobody is fearful of him or her. Because we are not enlightened, we are corrupted. Enlightenment, enlightenment in SikhRI makes us fearless. And when you are fearless, one can speak truthfully, one can reflect truthfully, and live genuinely by confronting any superstructure, be it religious or political or economical or social, which is creating the culture of dominance, and corruption keeps spreading. So coming back to the last slide, transvaluation is that word. This is really in sort of a final solution. This is what's needed. And I don't mean final solution from a Nazi or RSS angle. From a final analysis, maybe I should say, when we are going to change the values, we need to change our values, and that's where the solutions lies. We are done with the ideas from Gurbani and in the culture we are operating, how to confront these things, and we open up the floor to questions and answers. Narinder Pal Singh, do you want to field any questions? Okay. We have a question. I guess there's no mics.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Hanji Virji, Vaj Khalsa, Vaj Fateh. We have a question from Ravneet Kaur Tivana. She's asking, how do we go about mitigating religious and political corruption as Sikh organizations develop in the diaspora? We have Gurdwara committees and Punjabi politicians that we essentially use as a way to address some of the issues that our community faces. How do we prevent breeding of religious and political corruption in our Gurdwara committees, as well as in what is happening through Punjabi politicians?
Sure. I think I'll give my 2 cents, and maybe SP can add in as well, or maybe he can take a second question. But we gave 3-pointed answer to this approach. We don't have a prescriptive answer to every question which is out there. The approach is we are not reflecting on Gurbani to understand the culture around us. And secondly, the only thing we have to give is time and money. When we know that particular institution is corrupt, why do we give them our time and money? I can guarantee you, if they don't have your dollars and you set up alternative institutions where the dollars and time and money is spent properly, then you will breed a new class of representatives, whether they are religious or political.
Thank you, Virji.
Absolutely. I think, there's another question here, another aspect to it, which is like, if there are institutions that are corrupt, then, then there are also people who are trying to work for it. They need to figure out if you know that a certain institution or an individual is corrupt, then we need to identify and support those institutions or efforts that are working towards the betterment of everyone. So the idea is basically we all are very Gurdwara centric. This idea of charity and the guilt attached to it. We like to give our money to Gurdwaras. We do not identify with efforts or where people are working to, for the betterment of the society or the community. So we need to identify with those people, those organizations, and invest in them. That's how you create, parallel powers, positive or creative powers.
Thank you, Virji. We have another question from Arvinder Singh. He feels that many Sikhs who empower institutions have gone corrupt, like SGPC. It's because of Gurudwaras like Harmandir Sahib have attached themselves to institutions. How do we tackle that situation?
We covered that as well, and these are the recurring questions we get. But essentially, first, I'm going to go back to, approach. Approach is that constituency is blind. Let's come back to what we just learned. Andhi rayat gyan vi honi, because people are not paying attention to it. Not enough people are paying attention to these things. So whoever is in charge of institutions, their job is to loot. I mean, whether you like it, it's like our senses, as Guru Bani says. Their job is to loot them. If you're an aware individual, they stop looting your body and you figure out how to utilize all your senses to make this body developed. Let's apply the same thing. If enough constituents, if some of the, in social revolutions, they say today 7% critical mass is needed to change anything. What that means is work towards creating 7% of Sikhs who really understand what Sikh doctrine is and how to gain our Gurdwaras and institutions back. That's our work is cut out. What it means is 7% of Sikhs, if we just go by the general understanding, are not aware of what their institutions are supposed to do and what their doctrines are. Work towards gaining them back.
Virji, you mentioned that in this day and age, the fight, if you will, is to be fought in the sort of the information age over I think the main problems are misinformation, and it's not with an AK-47, but with the dissipation of information and accuracy of that information, and just generating a lot of content on our community, our panth, and these types of things are perhaps what we have to be focusing on. Could you please sort of spend a couple of minutes on that in terms of our latest tools that we can use in this sort of day and age, and how would you sort of break that down into perhaps some criteria or some perhaps some bullet points? What are our ways? What could we do today in the age of information to tackle some of these things?
I think again it's a very generic and open-ended question, but first thing I want to say is I didn't say what you just said, by the way, but I'll take it in spirit because I do believe in SikhRI everything is on the table. I mean, I just gave an example of yesterday South Sudan celebrated their Independence Day, and even the biggest peacekeeping organization in the world, if you go by that, is UN, and they have peacekeeping force, and it was because of their intervention and several other people's intervention, which includes force. That's how they established it. But today's age is exactly same. Today's age is, let's go back to our Shuds. Today's age is what? Guru Nanak Sahib first says, think about, have a dialogue with yourself, with your divinity, to understand what really is going on. Develop awareness. Awareness for us is what? Other than doing Bani and part, understand what's happening. What is your sources of information and how skewed and biased they are. Second thing Guru Nanak Sahib does is, he says, okay, let me see what my response needs to be. So we all need to evaluate our capacities and our strengths. And whatever your response is, you give it to the best of your ability. At that time, Guru Nanak Sahib goes and protests against Badar. He's jailed for it, and he records it. So even when the official records say that this didn't happen, we have Guru Nanak's record which says it did happen. We see the same thing now. There's so many denials. Person who is finally in The Hague denies that he ever killed people in Bosnia. People in Delhi still deny that they killed not only the Sikhs in India, but Muslims in Gujarat and the tribals in Assam and other places. And look at the Dalit situation. So denial, one way to counter denial is documentation. So Guru Nanak Sahib is documenting. We should be documenting. If you and I don't have those skills, well, let's support those who document these things. And third thing is engagement. And engagement at the time of Guru Nanak Sahib happened, he organized people. Where is engagement today? Maybe one or two organizations try to do that. We don't get engaged. At best we might get engaged in the issues which affect directly to the Sikhs. But what about effect? Remember, the Guru Nanak is sharing the pain of people who are being persecuted. We must relate to the pain in the world. We don't do it. Look at pain anywhere, whether they're rape victims in your own neighborhood, to homeless people in our neighborhood, to the survivors of 84 who don't have anyone helping them figure out how to fight injustice, maybe a couple of handful of people. You name it, there is injustice everywhere, and you are confronted. So tools are there. You guys are very smart. You have more tools now than I can list for you. And this 2.0 generation, people use webinars. They know exactly how to do this. Why don't they do it? Let's come back to the Sabad. We are too engrossed in our own pleasures. We are chewing our own, betel leaves. And we're just too busy doing that. We don't have that time left to deal with issues of life. Hence, those things don't take priority. Hence, we don't have a social momentum or the 7% of population to create a critical mass to really take on any major issue. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Virji. We do have a couple of questions, but we've run out of time. I'm going to request that the attendees forward these questions separately through emails. I would like to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you to all attendees for their questions, and my apologies for those whose questions were not addressed due to time constraints. And thank you to Harinder Singh and Surinder Pal Singh for an excellent presentation today, and hope everyone can join us in future webinars. And please make sure you can visit us on the SikhRI.org website, and I do strongly urge you to go there and look up other programs coming up in future. Hope you all have a great weekend. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you all. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.